Right. The story that we've been focusing on throughout the day is on SAA, which is experiencing a strike while it's in a precarious financial situation. Can the industrial action that's termed mother of all strikes cause the mother of all problems for the airliner? Let's ask Owen Nkomo, who is the CEO of Inkunzi Investments. Good afternoon to you, Owen.
Colin, good afternoon and good afternoon to viewers.
The government has signaled that it's going to take a hardline approach to deal with the problems at SAA. And they actually have been having a turnaround strategy. But then let's look at how you laid the basis of this concerning a turnaround strategy and a strategic direction where you want the airliner to be. Is this in line?
Well, look, I mean, the challenge with SAA, like with all other SOEs, is, in my humble view, is the continuity of management and the lifetime, or rather seeing these strategies coming to fruition has been very impossible. You've had a lot of CEOs at Transnet, you've had a lot of CEOs at Eskom, you've had lots of CEOs at SAA, in the past 10 years, and that is obviously telling of the untenable working environment that these guys have to work under. So whether there's a strategy in place, I think as long as there's no will to give the people that are supposed to be custodians of this strategy the responsibility and the time they need to see the strategy coming to fruition, I believe that companies like SAA are always going to struggle. And for SAA, it's quite a pity because this is an airline that was once reputed as Africa's best airline.
So how does SAA deal with its financial problems? I mean, digging itself out of the financial trenches would be very cumbersome. How will they even pay their debt to their debtors when government is only guaranteeing them 9.2 billion rand over the next 3 years? What's going to happen in the interim in terms of the way they've been suffering in terms of cash flow? And again, if they're saying that they're going to lose 50 million rand a day, this shows that this airline is really having profitability problems.
Yes, these are major profitability issues, and we are seeing them across all the state-owned enterprises. You're seeing it at Eskom, big amounts of money are being used every day, and they're being used unprofitably. Now, the big question is this: do you allow an organization that is unprofitable, that does not service the majority of South Africans, to continue to thrive under the life support of the government giving it money and guarantees and things like that? Or do you just say, let's take a few steps back and see why SAA was started and see how its profitability started to diminish over the past few years, and let's implement the strategies that might take SAA back there. And you know what the unfortunate thing is? It's very unfortunate and sad that people have to lose jobs, even if they're working for an airline that was once one of Africa's best airlines. And the issues that SAA is having, in my view, are mostly managerial issues, strategic issues that can be sorted out, and deals that were done in the past can be renegotiated, especially for, the leasing of these airlines that they are currently using. The bulk of the airlines are being leased. Those contracts have to be renegotiated with our government and this debt and the people that have given SAA the airplanes to run. I do think that if we take all of those things into consideration and focus on getting SAA back into working order and putting the right management in place and getting that management to deliver, I believe that SAA potentially goes back to where it was 10, 15 years ago. We have seen lots of talk around privatizing SAA. I think this is one entity that definitely has to be privatized. It doesn't benefit the majority of South Africans at all. So I don't see why it should not be privatized and put into the same post as Telkom was.
I mean, talking about privatization is another issue when an airline knows its financial parasitic problems. When you look at, for example, the union saying that it should have been sold 5 years ago, and when you know that you're having the problems with procurement, the issue of jet fuel being expensive, and the issue of those who are corrupt being untouchable at the airline. If you say that you should privatize an airline like this, and you have to do due diligence as a private entity, are you not really breathing into a dead corpse trying to resuscitate it?
Colin, I do think that privatizing Eskom is a viable option, and it can be done, and it can take Eskom back to profitability. Jobs that are lost at the moment will be those jobs that don't have a very big impact on the airline's bottom line, and you can replace those jobs in the future once the airline starts to grow. And yes, the servicing of this debt is an issue. You get into a deal with the government, you see if government can get you rather into a more stable financial position. But you must do some things. I think it's a concern that the unions are looking at this thing from one side. It's time we started looking at this as the employees of SAA, looking at this as the government, and looking at this as the unions representing the employees, and saying, would we rather let SAA collapse, or would we save SAA through reducing the cost of SAA? Sales is not profitable. Let's reduce the cost of this company. And the biggest cost element of an airline is always fuel, and then the next one is always going to be the number of people that work for the airline. And if it's not running successfully and profitably, you certainly want to put other people that can turn the airline around and allow them to run it. I believe they'll be able to pay back some of the debt. I believe that they will optimize the number of people that work there and optimize their operations and reduce the cost of running this entity. And it might not need to be supported by the government. I mean, Africa is open for business. SAA should be the leading provider of travel services to the continent and indeed to the rest of the world. And I don't understand how SAA fell back to where it is today. And if there's an answer to be given, it's in the management, it's in the interference with the state-owned enterprises, in terms of how these are run. I think that's where the problems lie. Once you free SAA of those two issues, this airline can survive.
All right. Thank you very much for making time. Coming to us live. It's Owen Nkomo coming to us live from Durban, and of course talking to us about the problems at SAA. On to other news now. President Cyril